of glory, I thank you for the gift of life, for the provision, for the grace and protection. We are really grateful and say thank you, God. As we are going to start our lecture, we put it into thy hands. We pray that may your Holy Spirit guide our lecturer as she teaches us, and may you also open our eyes and our mind so that we may understand whatever they are going to teach us for the glory and honor of your name. In Jesus' name I've prayed.
Amen. Thank you, Damali. Okay, so okay, let me just show myself here. Okay, so our review. So what did we learn last week? Let me just go back into our week 5. Now I'm going to share the Moodle. Okay, so this is week 5. And I think that I have you in your groups in the breakout session to talk about number 1, about your student population using the categories that we use in class. So I was wondering if we can take some time, maybe 5 minutes for each group, to kind of share how your discussion went last week. Group 1, if I may have a representative from group 1 to share what you talk about your assigned student population for your final group. So group 1 is Stella, Sarah, John, and Livia. Your student population is the direct entry into the degree nursing program. So it's just really short, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
We group 1. Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, Doc. The network this side is very poor. Yes, for group 1.
Okay.
This is John. This is John. For group 1, we looked at this population. We looked at this population we presented for the population of direct bachelor's degree students, and what we discussed was that this generation, these students belong to generation Y, in which most of them are young and energetic people, those learners, and therefore at this stage they are exploiting and they're exploring. So it is easier for them I mean, they are not easily paying attention to studies, to education. After all, they are not even paying for themselves. Majority of them, they are being supported by parents. Then we also looked at them as being, most of them are single and therefore exploring, as we've already said, relationships in class. And this of course affects their learning because as they try to concentrate later on, other issues, sexual relationships and all that retrieve into their minds. Particularly this group is attached so much to technology, and they always want to research a lot. So you realize that in class, when the teacher is talking about something, they're already on either Mr. Google, or they are in textbooks trying to search what the teacher is teaching to find out, and they tried so much to challenge the teacher to ensure that really what the teacher is teaching is she's either knowledgeable or nothing. Yes, these students or these learners understand so easily. They understand so easily that whatever is taught to them within less than 2 weeks, they have already mastered most of the content. But again, they forget so easily because they are not so much practical. They will never relate experience. What they're after here is studying to pass. So that is the particular group of students that we are talking about. And additionally, they need a lot of school, especially here. Actually, what we talked about when we shared in Uganda, particularly for this particular group, going forward, we discovered that most of the question here, the second question required us, doctor, to still add on what are the requirements of the person to be accepted here. Here, of course, at degree level in Uganda, we anticipate that most of them have already done UACE, that is Uganda Advanced Certificate of Education for A level. And most of these people have done either physics, chemistry, biology, math, at least that particular combination. In relation, it should have the essentials as biology, chemistry, doctor, and then the other relevant subjects to be added on. We also identified that there are more females in this course being admitted for this particular program compared to the males in this particular profession, and particularly this level. Yeah, that is brief. Unless my colleagues would wish to add, to supplement on what we discussed briefly. Thank you, Doc.
Very good. Excellent job, John. I was just smiling and nodding my head the whole time that this generation or this student population majority, of course we have the older, the adults, some adults too in between, like they're challenging. And then you mentioned something that they will be busy looking at the website to see if what you're saying is true. So and in some way that's a positive outlook, because then they are making sure that the information is correct, and they're making sure that the teacher or the teacher who is teaching them knows the topic, right? So if we look at it positively, it's a positive thing. But sometimes it could be challenging for the teacher, and sometimes it is like how would I say that for how many years that you have studied hard and to be at the level you're at, and how dare them question what you already know. But it's okay, it's their right. So the motivation really sometimes it's not there, because they're not, just like you said, they're not paying for the tuition. It's their parents or someone who is their guardian, right? And also the technology is at the tip of their fingers. So you say something and they look up, or sometimes they already know the answer and then they'll go ahead and ask it just to say that, oh, I know the answer. So good job. Okay, thank you, group 1. And let's hear from group 2. Any representative from group 2? I think we have the Amali, the 2 Isaacs, and Joy.
Yes. Group 2, we looked at the completion students. These are extensors who have done certificate, now upgrading to diploma level. And we basically see that after certificate, these students are around like 22 years. So where we considered also that at times, due to financial difficulties, some can go up to around 8 years minus going for the extension program. So we categorize them to be between 22 years to 30 years. So we looked at them being in Y and Z generations. Then when we consider the Y generation, we see that these students know a lot of technology. So as a teacher, we can use technology to teach them. And we know that they can as well use technology to research, maybe when you've given them assignments. Then they can multitask because they need to succeed in life. So they can multitask. They like doing other than knowing. So we need to involve them in practical sessions and their own learning. There is need to involve them in different learning activities since they can multitask. Then when we looked at the Y, because it's both Y and Z, and we also looked at the Z generation, we saw that they can absorb information very fast, but they can easily lose it, or they lose it instantly. So while teaching them, we need to always recap like the previous lectures, and we give them quiz, or at every end of the lecture, there is need to revise with them. Then they know a lot of technology, so they need to be taught from a different perspective as compared to their educators. So we need to be flexible and use different methods while teaching them. And as lecturers, we need to be open-minded while handling this generation. So in order to teach the Y and Z generation, we need to be interactive. We also put them in group discussions to be experimental, fair, and objective. There is also need to devise, to draw a diverse perspective to teach the different generations. We need to engage them and also foster them while teaching them. So like they have roles and responsibilities being extensors, so they may require support resources such as tutoring, and also opportunity for part-time studying. That's what we had as group 2.
Thank you, Damali. Very good. Excellent. So what I pick up is that this group, according to your discussion with your group, is that they are multitasker. They like to do different things. And also, I look at it that this group is more experienced than group 1's student population. So so we're having like the novice, like the group 1 student population, the direct entry into the BSN. Some of them might not have been exposed to terminologies about healthcare, and it's their first time. So your group 2, is more for completion from certificates, so they already have some kind of experience with nursing.
Yes.
So okay,
Thank you,
I'm glad we're having, you know, I'm very happy that each group is getting to know your student population. So group 3, last but not the least, this is the degree completion. I think we have Alex, Loy, and Jennifer.
Thank you, Doctor. Good evening and good morning that side. Our group was degree completion, and according to our discussion, this was experienced learners. And then we looked at what are the prerequisites of this degree completion. In order to attain this program, they some must have had certificate in nursing, some diploma, some must have, so one of any other prerequisite must have an experience of 2 years at least. Then you must have passed at least some subjects. with some good credits. There are some exams that they are given to like interviews in order to join this completion. So something else we looked at is their family experience, because we are saying these are experienced learners. They've got lots of things around them. We looked at who they grew up with, because they have families, family experience that they have. They have different levels of income. They grew up with different people who expect a lot from them. They have expectations from their parents, because some of them are the breadwinners. They have to look for money as they're supporting themselves and family, at the same time their parents. Some have different income levels. Then the gender, we looked at, most of them are females. For example, even this one of ours, you have few females that have joined, but nevertheless, we are there. The age, these are mature, of course, experienced learners. They are from the age group from 30 something to 40, 50, even some go up to 50. So that is most of the age group for these experienced learners. They have a diversity. Hello?
It's Alex.
Someone,
Go ahead.
they have diversity of technology. They can read for themselves as they are using technology to do some of the work while researching. The experienced learners also, they can work on different tasks because they're experienced. We have seen some are even working, they have families, they have to study. Now, like these ones in class, you have to study, you have to work, you have to take care of the family. So they have lots of things around them that they have to work on. Then we also looked at, when learning, these people have a lot of excuses, but sometimes they can keep up in time. They forget a lot because they have lots of things on their head. So there is need, as we are teaching them, to always remind them on what previously did we cover as we are in class, because there are lots of things which are on their heads. So their concentration is not at 100%, but when we keep on recapping or giving them time to review what they learned last time, they are able to pick up and they are able to move on the same page. Short, that's what I can discuss for now.
Thank you, Lloyd.
And that's what we looked at as group 3. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you,
Welcome,
Lloyd.
Doctor.
Another excellent sharing. So what I pick up is this group of students finishing the degree completion have a lot of responsibilities.
Yes.
Family responsibilities, but also work responsibilities. And this group are already experienced, as she said, and some of them is probably already experts in some of the nursing specialty that they are working. And a lot of them are leaders already in the community. So, so now you see the differences in levels of your student population that you are assigned to. So I know that there is a, let's see, let me just double check. So for the philosophy paper, I'm gonna hold off my feedback because I still have a few papers that I have to grade. And I wanted to take all the time that I can to give you best feedback that I could give so I can prepare you for your final paper. There is a discussion question number 2, and let me project that right now. So then we're all on the same page. Let me just share my screen, share the sound, optimize clip there. So discussion 2. is this. So the discussion two is due on the initial posting is due on 14th of July. And your respond to one of your peers is due the Friday on 16th of July. So you have 2 days to respond. And let me just. I'm not able to show it now. Okay. So the discussion question would be about the university setting. And if you are not teaching yet at the university setting or any teaching, then you can share what you hope, where you hope to teach at. And there's 5 questions here. So we will have time to watch the PowerPoint slide presentation. So this one is your next assignment. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna share again to make sure that you will see it again. Okay. What happened? Okay, aloha, MNS 11, aloha from Henderson, Nevada, America, USA. This presentation is a continuation of the teaching and learning concepts and theories. This time we're going to do a part 2, and we're going to dive into the development of theories and the learning styles. Let's start with Erikson's theory of the adult development. So in Erikson's theory, there's different stages, and each stage represents a crisis that have opposing emotions. For example, for infants, they have this stage of trust versus mistrust. And at this stage, the infant must learn to develop a trusting relationship with their parent, the mother usually. And this is where they develop hope and drive, motivation. This is from birth to 1.5 years old. The next stage is the toddler stage. This is for children, toddler who are 1 to 3 years old. And the opposing emotions of crisis that they have at this stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is when they must learn how to control themselves and also their willpower. You know, when they say the terrible 3 in America. The next stage is children who are 3 to 6 years old. These are the preschoolers. The Erikson's theories is tailored with the United States children. And the preschoolers, they learn how to explore things through play. And so at this stage, they must develop their purpose and direction. So the two opposing emotions that present a crisis for these children, 3 to 6 years old, is initiative versus guilt. The next stage is the school age child stage. These are children who are 5 to 12 years old, and they must, this is when they interact with their school, teachers, their friends, their neighbors. They must learn how to be competent and the method of how they are competent. The opposing emotions crisis is industry versus inferiority. They like to take initiative, they like to cook. This is when they get burned in the stove because they like to do what mom does or what dad does. The next stage is the adolescent stage. These are 9 years old to 18 years old, earlier in the girls than the boys. This is when they have tasks to accomplish, And this is when they learn fidelity and devotion. This is when they have girlfriends or boyfriends. And the identity crisis that they have is identity versus role confusion. They're trying to find their own identity. They're trying to find their role in the society, in the world. The next stage is the young adulthood stage. These are individuals who are 18 years old to 30 years old. This is when they form their solid relationship. Mostly, this is when they get married. That's when they are expected to have full-time jobs. This is when they are expected to have social life, and they must learn how to love. And this is when they form affiliation with others. And so, therefore, they will experience intimacy or they may experience isolation. The next stage is for individuals who are 30 years old to 65 years old, getting older at this stage. This is when we call the individuals in the middle adulthood. And this is when they learn how to give back to the community. They have the need to help others. They have the need to contribute to the society. And this is when they learn how to care and be productive. The opposing emotions that they experience at this stage is whether they are um, this is generatively versus stagnation. Are they helping back in the community? Are they I just wanted to say I made a mistake in here. It should be 30 to 50. Contributing back in the community. Are they active? Are they um, participating? And so this is when we call it in America middle crisis. The next stage is the late adulthood. This is for 50 plus and old age. At this stage, they are grandparents. This is when the individual have to the need to have meaning in their lives. They have purpose in their lives. They are doing a recollection of their life achievements. And this is when they must learn wisdom and renunciation. The opposing emotions that they experience at this stage, according to Erickson, is integrity versus despair. So, why is Erickson's theory helpful overall in life? Why is it helpful for teachers? So I want you, I'm going to pause and you can think about it, write it on your notes. Why is Erickson's theory, stages of development and psychosocial, helpful for a teacher? Okay, I hope that you have figured out and discover why Erickson's psychosocial development, stages of development are helpful for you as a teacher. Depending on the population. Remember, I have mentioned in the previous PowerPoint presentation that it is helpful to do an inventory of your student population. For your final group presentation, you will be presenting the different population and how to enter a school of nursing and how to become a registered nurse. Okay, now the next theory that we're going to talk about is the learning styles by Cole's model. This is the experiential learning theory. And sometimes it's also called a cycle because people go through stages on the cycle. Uh, just like Erickson's psychosocial stages theory, some people just go back to the earlier stages. So in the experiential learning theory by Cole's model, there are different types of the experiential learning theory. One is called the immediate or concrete experiences, and that provides for a basis for whatever learning stage the individual is at. This is called CE, concrete experiences. The next theory, the next stage of theory is cycle is the observations and reflections, and with the initial RO. Those are assimilated into abstract concepts are called AC, and those that result in actively testing the learning is initial AE. So for the Coles model, they have four learning styles: the diverging, which is a combination of the CE and RO; assimilating, which is a combination of AC and RO; and converging, which is a combination of AC and AE. Accommodating is the last learning style, which is a combination of CE and AE. And I will provide a handout explaining what diverging is, assimilating, and converging and accommodating is. So how does this help us as a faculty and as a teacher? How does cold learning styles help us? Some studies have found that nursing students are strong, concrete learners and people-oriented styles. And some studies have found that nursing students are strong reflectors, but also that dual learning styles exist. And with the program that we have, we are encouraging students to do a lot of self-reflection and what works best and what doesn't work out. So then they can go back and reassess how they're learning, and they can find ways of how they can best learn. And same token with the teachers and the faculty, it's also good to evaluate your student population and how best they learn. And if they are visual, if they are auditory, or if they are kinesthetic. And some studies have found that direct entry students and completion students differ. Completion students have stronger AE scores. They are more active experimenter. Also, if you think of the cycle, it is also helpful students progress from concrete to reflective to abstract and then to active experimentation. And some study found that nurse educators are stronger in abstract styles. So we need to sort of adjust our teaching style to a way that we start with a concrete style first, especially for fundamentals when they are still not familiar with the concepts in nursing. It does not seem to be a learning style that predicts nursing specialty though. So it depends on what it is they're studying. How do we select learning activities? We're going to go into the Bloom's taxonomy, the cognitive domain and affective domain and psychomotor domain. In the cognitive domain, we look at the knowledge, the comprehension, the application, the analysis, the synthesis, the evaluation, and we then look at the learner's progress from the knowledge to evaluation. The knowledge refers to the understanding the facts and understanding the concepts of what it is that they are learning, and also the principles involved in that concept that they are learning. In the comprehension, this is looking at their ability to understand. Someone is wanting me to change the view. This is actually a recorder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the PowerPoint slides via email, so then you can see it bigger. Understand the meaning of new information. And there's also the integration of the previous information that they already know into the new information that is now being presented to them. The application is the ability of the learner to apply the information to a new situation. For example, they now know that elevated heart rate can also be caused by stress. And the same token, they also found out, the learner also found out that caffeine can also increase the heart rate, the pulse. So having that information with them, they are now having the ability to apply that new information to a new situation when they're taking care of someone with elevated pulse or heart rate. Analysis is a higher level of the cognitive domain where now the learner has the ability to break the information down into different parts and being able to understand the concepts and the principles of the information they already know and they are currently learning. Synthesis is now putting together ability of the learner to put together the parts in a whole, even in different configuration, even in the different situation. So this is when we can now observe if our learner are learning from the beginning to the end after they're now able to comprehend the concepts and the principles and now able to apply those concepts and principles and being able to pull apart the knowledge that they have learned previously and the knowledge that they are learning now and putting it together and being able to apply the new knowledge and the old knowledge that they've learned before into a different situation. Now, ability to evaluate is their ability to pass judgment on the information. Is this new information true? Does it align with the previous information that I know? So they're now able to evaluate whether it is something that is aligned or a part of the previous knowledge that they learned, or if they'll be able to change the way that they are practicing. You know, sometimes they say that, for example, if it's better to use regular water in order to unclog a nasogastric tube, or they find that the new information that the soda can be used to unclog nasogastric tube. So now they're going to evaluate which one is better. In the affective domain, different from the cognitive domain, you're now talking about beliefs, feelings, attitudes, and values and emotions. Mostly these ones we are training our nursing students about their values. We are now introducing to them maybe the ethical principles or the code of ethics in nursing and looking at how they're going to apply this concepts and principles and their emotions. You know, they are now talking about emotional intelligence. You know, how are they able to handle someone who is dying and how is that affecting their own self? And are they able to still perform the nursing skills? Are they able to still perform how they take care of people, especially those who are, you know, actively dying? So these are some of the knowledge that they are learning in the affective domain. The next domain is the psychomotor domain. This is mostly in the nursing skills, how they are learning in their fine motor, how are they able to, you know, prime the tubing, especially if they're starting an IV in IV fluids, or they are doing a piggyback with their main IV fluids and their you know, antibiotics. This is more manual. This is more talking about the gross motor skills. Now let's talk about learning activities. Why do we need to know about learning activities as a future nurse educator? learning activities, we need to really design our learning activities. We call it creative learning activities. You know, you have to design this very well so then you can engage your students with knowledge, attitudes, competencies, and skills. Lecture is good because especially if you need to give them a great deal of um, information and it is really giving them a great deal of material in a short amount of time. And reading is also another learning activity that you can provide to your students. This is when they gain information on their own pace and their own time. Viewing media is another learning activity that you can provide, just as I am providing to you right now. Some of the learning activities that you can incorporate with your teaching as a nurse educator is providing a small group activities, maybe a problem-based learning. Written assignments is another learning activity that you can provide. Journaling is another one. You know, have the students journal what they are doing each day in the clinical setting or even in the didactic. Developing care plans is another one. Mapping and doing pathways, discussion or debates. You know, we have on our first and second week of our learning and teaching class that I had asked you to go into a breakout session with your group and talk about your experiences as a learner and as a teacher. Storytelling is another one. Remember the handout that I posted on Moodle that Jesus is a master teacher. He's always doing a narrative. He's always using parables for his 12 disciples to learn about life. Storytelling is great. I love storytelling. You can ask the previous MNS students from 2013 up to 2019 and how I love talking stories. Case study is another learning activity that you can. Role playing, games and simulations is another good learning activity. Computer assisted activities, we do a lot of that here in America. We have what we call ATI, and they can go into the website on their own and doing a lot of practice assessment, and there are some activities. How are learning activities designed? Uh, First, does it fit into overall course objectives as well as the specific ones for the activities? Remember, I previously talked about course learning objectives versus module learning objectives. Um, you have the learning activities are designed to increase students' active involvement with the material. So it cannot be just busy work. The learning activity has to be purposeful. The activities should be uh, are professional, like things that we will do ourselves. And learning activities has to fit into one or more of the domains. Not only cognitive, you need to also include the affective domain as well as the psychomotor domain, especially in the um, early early part of the program in nursing because they are not familiar with the concepts in nursing, they are not familiar with the principles. So you need to make sure that your learning activity is designed to fit into more than one of the domains. Here are some more principles. The result should be, should result, the learning activities should result in critical thinking by the students. Um, and always push them and encourage them to higher levels of thinking. It should be emotionally satisfying. You know, some students are frustrated with some learning activities that are not their liking. Some, you know, sometimes it's half-half. Half of your students will like it, half of your students will not like it. So at least you get half of them liking it. So now you can then evaluate what the other half likes to do. Um, Keep the students engaged so then they're not bored. Doing just 100% lecture is kind of boring. You know, it's boring for me. So you need to make a connection with them. Also, you need to make a connection with the previous learning. I usually do a recap or a review of previous concepts and then bring them back to the present. And you always have to apply subsequent learning. Um, so you need to allow the faculty to guide and monitor the students' practice. And I have to find out if this is the right page here that I'm putting in, because we now have a new edition of our teaching and learning book. So this is the book that you should be looking at, the teaching and learning, teaching and nursing, a guide for faculty, and it is should be the 6th edition. That's 2020. That's our new textbook. Okay. Case study. What is case study all about? You present the learner with a situation, maybe an example of a previous experience that you have. So depending on the topic that you are teaching, I require my students to interact with the situation using critical thinking. I call on them, or I call out for a volunteer first to uh, share with the group what do they think about the case scenario, what do they think should have happened, or if they have to do, if they are in the same scenario, uh, what could you do to make it better? So ask the students question relative to the case study. The narrative, you need to tell a story to illustrate a point. There has to be a lesson learned, not just talking stories, not just, dialogue, social communication, but also the students um, have to learn something, like a lesson to be learned. Have students discuss the story, identify what happened, what is going on, and what is there to learn in the story. Role play is nice too. You will be really surprised how the students are so creative if you don't give them strict specific instruction, and just give them just an overall instruction and they will run with it. They are very creative. Um, Sometimes the role play is a drama, it's a dramatization of a scenario. You can assign like a scenario of um, a newly diagnosed patient with diabetes, and how the challenges of the nurse educator, and also the dietitian. And you can have some students can act out a story. They're really good. Students can discuss what they saw, what happened, what they could do next, and what they could change or do differently. In the simulation, a real situation that progresses. A student is allowed to respond to the patient situation without intervention from the faculty. It's so hard. I usually put both my hands behind my back uh, to not to interrupt, or to allow the students to really do the patient situation without my intervention. The really key for a good learning in a simulation is debriefing. You need to really do a good debriefing. The learning occurs when the debriefing happens, and the learning can occur in all the domains in the simulation. That's what's good about the simulation, because you touch upon all the three different domains: the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. Again, I'm not sure if this is page 160. If there's any change, I will email you the correct page on this one. Getting ready for a learning activities. First, before you implement the learning activity, you need to go back to your course objectives and your module objectives and see if it is aligned to uh, the learning activities you have planned. You have to clearly plan it. You have to prepare for the equipment. You have to prepare for the logistics. Did you reserve the room where we're going to do the learning activities? You need to look at the time frame. How long do you think you can expect the students to perform this learning activity. And again, the debriefing is very important. That's the key to make sure that your students are learning. What factors keep us from using learning activities? Sometimes the faculty themselves are what's keeping us from the learning activities. They just want to do lecture. That's all that the students will do. Sometimes the students are, like I said, 50% of the students of the class will like your activity and 50% won't, because they have their own preference. Some of them just wants to be a sponge. You know, a sponge, you put water in it and it just sucks it. Yeah, so you don't want that. You want the students to participate in the discussion. I call out on students, you know, especially if they're not participating. You have to look at the time. How much time do you have? How much time is allotted for this particular topic? You also have to look at your resources. One of the learning activity that I use for a topic regarding elimination, urinary elimination, is I use the fruit juices for them to identify what could be happening with a patient with urine output of almost coffee color. How about with a patient who is having a urine output which is green? You know, sometimes specific medications can cause a urine output of a color of green, a tint of green. How about with red? You know, so that's just an example of a learning activity that I have implemented for my students. And that's all that we have for learning theory part 2. And I will see you again next time. Again, if you have any questions, anything that needs clarification, please contact me by email or WhatsApp. Until again, aloha. Okay, so what do you guys think? It's already 10 o'clock. So the other PowerPoint slide, any questions so far before I move on to the next topic?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, John.
Yeah, my question is specifically concerned with, I didn't just get you when you talked about the learning activities.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, one of the learning activities called journaling. May you kindly elaborate more about the same? Then 2 was about these factors, just the factors that keep us from using the learning activities, such as faculty and students. It did not come out very clearly to my side. May you also re-echo about the same? Thank you.
Yes, so let me just send this PowerPoint slide to everybody, the number 2. Hold that thought, because if I don't do this now, I'm gonna forget to send it. Somebody, while we're looking at the recorded lecture that I did, was sending it right now. We can look at it separately. Yes, thank you for that question, John. So what it is discussing about, we're all wanted to do creative learning activities, but some faculty just are comfortable with doing just lecture. So the faculty themselves become the barrier of delivering creative learning activities. Does that make sense?
It does. Then about students,
And
you talked about students being just able to, some students just want to just pass the exams.
Yeah, they just want, some students just want lecture because they don't want to stand up and do the activities. Like example that I gave was instead of just lecturing and just putting PowerPoint slides about urinary elimination, like looking at the urine, like, so we all know at this level, I know all of you know that the urine output gives us one of the assessment that we need to do when someone is having a, for example, someone who has renal disease. So we look at the amount of the urine that they are putting out, right? And sometimes if they had surgery, and then we're looking at the color of the urine. So if you see that it's red, it means that they're bleeding, right, in the urinary system. So instead of just lecturing about it, I did an activity where I put in those specimen cup. I put in fruit juices and had the students go in a group, and then each group evaluate like, okay, what does this color of urine means? Sometimes it's so concentrated that it could mean there could have infection, or it could be that they're retaining fluids, or it could be really diluted, right? So which, what does that mean? So I think that the students who are not enjoying the activity sometimes are the barrier in providing creative learning activities. So I think it's more like if the students are not ready to learn, even though you put in creative learning activities, then they will not be learning because they're not ready. So they become the barrier for providing the learning activities. Does that make sense, John?
Yes, it does.
So
Finally, about journaling, I didn't understand clearly about journaling
what
as
is
part
that?
of the learning activity.
Say that again. I can't.
Journaling was part of the learning activities that a nurse educator may embrace. Could you react about the same? I saw it there after small group activities. Yes. Next was journaling. What did you mean by journaling as one of the activity, the learning activities for a nurse educator, probably that would embrace?
Okay, I still can't. Can you spell it? Maybe it's
Journal.
yeah.
Yeah, like JOURNA.
Oh, journaling.
Yes, journal.
So for example, for my mental health nursing clinical rotation, I have the student journal of what they learned for the week. So we meet in the hospital like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on Friday, I have them journal of their experience taking care of someone who has mental illness. They journal, like, when as a Christian, some of us journaling.
Okay.
So that could be a learning activity that you can assign to your students. With the journaling, what happens is it allows them to reflect on what they are learning. It allows them to reflect on the experiences that they are having while taking care of, for example, the patient in the psychiatric unit. When they journal, like, okay, today, like for example, on Monday, so at nighttime, before going to sleep or before having dinner, they would journal like, today I learned about schizophrenia, and I took care of a patient who has schizophrenia, and then look at the book that describes someone who has been diagnosed with this. So that's journaling. Does it make sense, John?
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much, Doc.
Okay, so okay, who's that? Okay, so I'm going to, I think I emailed everybody this PowerPoint slide, and I know it's 10:07. So I'm going to, because you need this before I put you in your group. So let me just this is the part that you will need. Okay. So I'm gonna try to keep it within like 10-15 minutes talk. Can everybody see my okay, can you see my screen? Teaching and Learning Concepts and Theories Part 3.
Yes, we can see, Doc.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay, so Teaching and Learning Concepts Theories Part 3. I can't find my my recorded one, so I'll just and then again it's MNS 11, but it's the same concept. So the cognitive and behavioral learning cognitive theory, more on the some examples are cognitive developmental theory, social cultural, multiple intelligences belongs to this category. And we'll also look over briefly about educational frameworks like adult education theories, humanism, interpretive pedagogies, feminist, postmodern, phenomenology, patterns of knowing, and narrative pedagogy, caring theory. And the caring theory of Eugene Watson, that's one of my favorite. Okay, so learning theories, what are they? Why do we even consider them in teaching and learning? That's because the learning theories and frameworks, they provide structure. It provides when you're teaching and giving instructions to your students, and it also provides some guidance when you do learning activities. It is very essential to effective teaching. Like I'm going to have your group choose a theory that is going to be more effective student population, right? So we talked about the direct entry, the completion from certificate and the degree completion, and categorize it by their level of where they're learning and knowledge. You have your novice learners, you have your experienced learners, and you have your expert learners. So as a teacher, you have to choose which theory is appropriate for your student population. You also need to consider the philosophy of your institution where you teach, and also you as a teacher and the learners for your individual preferences. Like I said, I really love the caring theory with Jim Watson, because it focuses on mind, body, and spirit. So you have to make sure that I'm keeping track of my time, so you have time to do your breakout session. Learning theories also focus on how people learn. And for the educational framework, those are the methods that we provide the environment so then our learners can best learn. And it's also aligned with our learning outcomes that we had set for our learners to learn. And this lecture will be organized by theory definition, the theorist, and then the role of the faculty, and then the role of the student, and then the advantages and disadvantages in the application of the different educational framework. So let's start with, we're going to start with the behavioral learning theories. Some of the theorists for the behavioral learning theories are Pavlov, Thorndike, Skinner, and those are the theories, but we also have nurses who have formulated some theories in learning, like Bevis, Dedornier, and Orman. The premise of this behavioral learning theories is that behavior is learned. And so it's learned, and sometimes the learning is advanced more when you reward the learner, because the reward helps to encourage them with your desired results. And so your external environment reinforces the change in the behavior. So the setting or climate that you wanted for this theory to be to be effective is in the classroom or clinical lab. So this theory is very highly structured. So this would be good for a student population who needs high structured when they're learning. So what is your role as a faculty in the behavioral learning theories? So your role is you're going to dominate the discussion because you are the expert on the topic and your learners are still learning, they're novice. So you dominate because it's highly structured. The faculty has knowledge and authority of the topic, and the faculty has to establish the favorable learning environment. And as a faculty, you have to clearly define the objectives of what your learners, what you hope your learners to accomplish and learn. And again, you reward the desired outcomes with praise. And then for this theory, you ignore undesired outcomes. And we're going to talk more about that. So what is the role of the student in the behavioral learning theory? The student's role is to follow the faculty directions and use the behavioral objectives as guidelines, and then looks for tangible rewards. I noticed that I have 72 slides for this, so we might not be able to go through this. But I think that I sent this PowerPoint slide presentation by email. So you can use that, go through the PowerPoint slides when you go into your group. So I wanted to give you some time. So these are the advantages. Because it's highly structured, then it's easier for the learners to be more focused. And because the objectives are clearly identified. So these are all the advantages for behavioral learning theories. And these are the disadvantages. And some you would think that it is actually an advantage, but the other theories you will see why it is a disadvantage. And you can read less visible because of the mental process. It can be observed or it may not be observed. And the application. The disadvantage of this is the faculty ignores things that are incorrect, so then you don't have time to correct them. And then how have you used this learning theory in teaching nursing? What have you observed of the advantages and disadvantages? And the other theory is cognitive learning theory. So behavior learning theory is you're focusing on the behavior of your learner. This time you're focusing on how they learn cognitively. And Gestalt is a German psychologist who have used this cognitive learning theory a lot. And then you can read this on your own for now. And then the information is like computer processing model. So and it talks about assimilation, what the student had learned, cognitively learned before. For example, your fundamental nursing students, they start learning how to do wound care, right? And then how are they going to apply it on a higher level? So they continue on building on the old skills that they have into new skills and more advanced skills. And there's a lot of memorization by repetition on this one. So this is the premise of the cognitive learning theories, that conditions of learning influence the meaningful acquisition of new ideas by modifying existing cognitive structure. So when your nursing students finish the fundamentals, when they are checked off with the sterile technique, later on, they'll realize there are many different ways in making sure that they can keep the sterile technique. There's not just one way. And this is your role as a faculty. And this is the role of the students. and the advantages of cognitive learning theories. Disadvantages. Okay, so as you go through this, so that's the cognitive development theories. There's also the social, cultural, historical influences. So as a group, you can look through this. Multiple intelligences is another theory that you can use. The premise of multiple intelligences is every single student in your class has different kinds of intelligences. Not only one, not only two, but many. And that the premise of multiple intelligences is that every human has a unique intelligence profile and may have more than one. And the role of the student, advantages, the application, and then jump right into the educational frameworks, adult education theory. Andragogy is the education of adults by Knowles. Pedagogy is the education of children. And here's the premise here that the adults are not content-centered. They are more self-directed. So if I can see this, the group 2 and group 3 can actually use this framework. So depending on what level your student population is at. Then, so your advantages and disadvantages, and humanism is another one. Sorry, I'm going through fast so then I can put you in your group to talk about it. So the feminist pedagogy. From my experience, my past students have used the adult theory. They also use the, I forgot which other one, the cognitive. I like a combination of behavioral and cognitive theory. I'm also going to send you a link to the YouTube where you can learn more about the differences between cognitive theory and the behavioral theory. So these are just some of the theories that you can choose from. And this is my favorite one, the caring theory, because caring is really the foundation of nursing. And it's a moral idea and central to the core of nursing, right? So we talked about Benner from novice to expert. So group 1's student population is mostly the population, the novice learner. Group 2 has the experienced learner, maybe a little bit combination also of the expert learner. And group 3 is definitely expert learners because the student population are already in the healthcare community. They're already working as a nurse for many years. They are probably leaders in their institution or where they work at, and they have multiple responsibilities. And that's the disadvantages. Okay, so here are the questions for you. What is the theme of all of these new theories of teaching in nursing? And what ideas can you gain for your own philosophy of teaching and learning? What ideas are there for the Ugandan nursing education in the future? And what ideas are there for research? Okay. So what I'm going to do is going to put you in your groups. So you have about, I'll give you 15 minutes. I'm going to assign you. Okay. So I apologize that I have to go through that really fast because I really want you to be in your groups to start talking about it. Okay, so group 1 is Sarah. Where are you, Sarah? Sarah, John, and Lydia. Okay, I can't see Lydia. Oh, okay. Lydia is also Sarah. That's why I get confused. Okay, good.
Yes, I'm also Sarah.
Okay, group 2
Yeah.
is Molly, Molly, Isaac N, Isaac W, and Joy. Okay, and then group 3 is Alex, Jennifer. Okay, so I'm opening the room. So what your activity would be to decide in which theoretical framework you're going to choose for your student population. At least choose 2 just in case another group is choosing the same. Okay. And I'm going to step out for about 5 minutes and I'll be right back. So once you see the invitation, go ahead and join your group. Okay.
Gracias, Will.
Alex,
I mean, Isaac, what's up?
For everybody to come back.
Members are coming back slowly.
Alijja tusiibula eyo mulongo zaaki. Going to say tuli kubona.
Okay. Do we have everybody or we lost some people?
Yeah, there.
Okay. So I'm just going to go straight. This is only like four minutes, 4 minutes video.
Five branches of educational psychology. The field of educational psychology bloomed from the perspective and theories drawn from research and practice. Just as a tree grows branches, the field of educational psychology has distinct branches that approach learning differently. Although each branch or perspective is separate, they all have a common thread of addressing knowledge and understanding. Today, we will discuss 5 branches of educational psychology: behavioral, cognitive, developmental, social cognitive, and constructivist. Behaviorism is the theoretical perspective in which learning and behavior are described and explained in terms of stimulus-response relationships. The key assumptions of behaviorism are: 1. The environment influences behavior. Behaviorists believe that people's behaviors are a result of their interaction with the environment. Specifically, people become conditioned or molded to respond in certain ways based on responses like feedback, praise, and rewards. Learning is described through stimuli and responses. Behaviorists focus on observable events rather than events that occur inside a person's head, such as thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Assumption number 3, learning must involve a behavioral change. Theorists believe that learning has not occurred unless an observable change in behavior is observed. Assumption 4, learning must occur when stimulus and response occur close together in time. Learners must associate their response with a stimulus, and in order for that to occur, the two must happen in conjunction with each other, or in other words, be contiguous. And finally, animals and humans learn in similar ways. Behaviorists, unlike many other theorists, perform their experiments using animals because they believe the study of animals could explain human learning behavior. The major behaviorists you should be familiar with include John Watson, known as the father of behaviorism, Ivan Pavlov, best known for classical conditioning, B.F. Skinner, known for operant conditioning, and Edward Thorndike, known for the law of effect. The next perspective of educational psychology is the cognitive perspective. Cognitive psychology is the theoretical perspective that focuses on learning based on how people perceive, remember, think, speak, and problem solve. The cognitive perspective differs from the behaviorist perspective in 2 distinct ways. First, cognitive psychology acknowledges the existence of internal mental states, disregarded by behaviorists. Examples of these states are belief, desire, ideas, motivation, so non-observable states. And second, cognitive psychologists claim memory structures determine how information is perceived, processed, stored, retrieved, and forgotten. Cognitive psychology encompasses perception, categorization, memory, knowledge representation, language, and thinking processes. The major cognitive psychologists you should be familiar with include Jean Piaget, who developed Piaget's theory of cognitive development and stages of cognitive development, Lev Vygotsky, best known for his sociocultural development theory, Noam Chomsky, referred to as the father of modern linguistics, and Jerome Bruner, who coined the term scaffolding. Our next perspective is the developmental perspective.
Oh, wait a minute. I am talking and I didn't unmute myself. So hopefully you got the idea about what you need to incorporate with your final group project presentation in regards to your assigned student population. So there's so many theories out there, but I would suggest that you keep the theories that's in your textbook and also within what we have talked about during class. And it's 10:45 already. Any questions so far regarding the theory?
Yes, Doctor. You just said something that you want us, I think, to use the theories that are in the book that and the ones that you just talked about.
Yes.
Wow. In our discussion, we had looked at a different theory. That is the empowered holistic education theory, because we were looking at students from different generations, those ones that are completion from certificate.
Mhm.
And then we thought that would work well, but I think maybe we need to change and look into the book and the lecture.
Yes, look at the PowerPoint slide presentation that I shared, which talk about the premises of each theory and the advantages and disadvantages. I think that would help your group to decide which theory you wanted to incorporate with your presentation for your student population. I think that would help you. And you don't have to make a final decision about your theory until let me look at our calendar here. Until we're in week 6. Week 8, let me see. I think you wanted to make sure by week 7 that you have a solid discussion about it and a final decision on what theory you're going to use for your presentation. And any question before we do our closing prayer? I gather there's no question. Continue your discussion with your group. Damali, do you have a question? Okay. So,
No, Doctor, I don't have.
okay. So I'd like to ask another volunteer to lead us in closing prayer.
Let us pray.
Thank you, Lydia.
Father, we thank you for the time we've had with Dr. Maliki. We thank you for having taken us through the sessions.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for everything. As we live, as we wind up with these sessions, Father, guide us, guide our lecturer as wherever she is. We ask you kindly, Father, to guide us as we read through. We ask you for the reminders as we are multitasking students. Help us remember whatever we've learned in the upcoming sessions, that we are able to apply the knowledge when time comes. We thank you, Lord. We glorify your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And okay, I will. So thank you for so we will have, just a reminder, we will have session next week. Where are we now? So next week, but not on the 20th, because I'll be traveling to that day. So aloha everyone. Have a good time, Dr. Bernie.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.